Well, release the Kraken.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another Unleashing the Kraken. It's gone to the point where unless there are very hefty days having to do with, editing and stuff on the back end, Camden and I are going to try and do this on a, almost daily basis, respected relative to how many times per week we do Krakens, 4 to 5 times per week. So with that being said, for those listening on audio, I mean, the great thing is that you now have Camden's input because unfortunately you won't get a visual, but either way, let's jump right into it. So first off, according to the BBC, the most trapped Canadian miners have been rescued after 2 days. Now, if we scroll down a little bit, we're going to see that 33 miners trapped deep underground in Eastern Canada have been brought to the surface 2 days after an accident damaged the mine's lift. The workers at the Totten mine in Sudbury, Ontario, climbed about 4,000 feet to 1.2 kilometers using a series of ladders with the support of a rescue team, end quote. Now, Sudbury, for a little bit of a personal note, is really not far from where I live, to tell you folks the truth. Maybe a couple-hour drive, give or take, not even. And this is assuming this is all, nothing is going unreported or anything like that. There's no missing context. I got to give it to these guys, man. These miners getting themselves out of stuff. Like, even what was that case was it Mexico a handful of years ago? They had to get in shape underground with while rationing food and water in order to be able to fit through some of those tubes. But hey, they did it. And I got to say, God bless them, right?
I know. Yeah, no, just glad they are, get to see the light again. There's still 6 miners completing that climb. I mean, this seems like a one at a time person kind of thing. What's more interesting to me is this was happening like last Friday and everything, and I didn't see news about miners trapped, period, on any news wires, anything. I mean, I'm glad that they told us about it after they were all safe, but like, what if they weren't? Would we not have really heard about the death of miners trapped kind of thing? That's my only perspective.
Exactly. I fully agree.
Yeah. So next, space is getting, very dominated by corporate entities. SpaceX, talking about Blue Origin. When they launch these things, it is disrupting the entire air traffic control system. You've got an entire locked area close to air traffic where planes are having to completely reroute their entire way they fly and path and everything. And you have to ask, what is this going to affect? I mean, we've already got rising fuel costs. We've got rising problematic things with flying at all.
Well, if I could just throw my 2 cents in for those that are seeing the visual aspect of this on YouTube. If you see clearly the flight patterns that are being shown and the way in which they're going back and forth to and from Florida, San Juan, Atlanta, you name it. First off, a couple of questions come to mind. UFOs, obviously, with extraterrestrial craft, and especially even if humans are manning them, if they know what they're doing, they can avoid these craft and whatnot. But interestingly enough, if we look at the secret space program testimonies from people who don't even know each other, the alleged headquarters and mothership base of the secret space program of the Solar Warden fleet is right off the coast of Florida. It's quite ironic that we see the most amount of activity from a mainstream media, article being projected there. Now, again, I would even stretch as far as to say that certain human-looking extraterrestrials are manning some of the SpaceX Blue Origin vehicles without Elon Musk knowing, without Bezos knowing. Maybe they do know, maybe they don't know, and we know this.
They don't have to know. That's the difference. The compartmentalization of everything. They can just be really excited that they get to go to edge of space. They don't have to really even. Yeah, absolutely.
And one last thing very quickly is that just to corroborate that, we see in the main episodes, we cover stories having to do with, ufologists and even people going through a walk in the woods, and then, a UFO landing, but the individual walking off that alien craft or seemingly alien craft is a human looking alien. who could speak telepathically wearing a United States Air Force jumpsuit. So again, if we look, Robert Reed saying that they could be right next to us in a movie theater, restaurant, the Pentagon, I certainly don't see why that couldn't be the case here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's not the only people testing things out in space.
Right.
DARPA touts historic free flight test of Raytheon's hypersonic missile prototype as the U.S. struggles to catch up with Russia. That's not the only people doing flight things. We'll get into China's own flight test things later. The U.S. military secretive R&D wing has announced a successful flight test of a hypersonic missile system developed by Raytheon. The free flight launch for a hypersonic air-breathing weapon concept was conducted successfully last week and met all primary test objectives. Dave says it all the time. It's not that DARPA doesn't know what it's doing. It's that it knows exactly what it's doing. This brings us one step closer to transitioning these to a program of record that offers next generation capability to the U.S. military.
I just wanted to say really quickly that the thing is exactly what you said, brother Camden, and with DARPA specifically, it's not into this, people, these articles tend to get people into the debate of, who's ahead, Russia, China, the US. It's such a multi-layered chess game that I don't even look at that personally anymore, in my opinion. Putting aside an unbiased, sort of down the middle reporting aspect, I see it like this. These are signals that hint at more deeper layers, and they utilize the mainstream media to project these signals and hints to one another for the intelligence agencies of the CCP, of MI6, Mossad, and CIA to gather, right? And so I think they all have this stuff, if you want my opinion. They all
That's
have
exactly
it.
What I mean. Yeah. I mean, it says here even inflict significant damage through kinetic energy alone, even without high explosives. Wait, didn't you just describe a direct energy weapon?
Exactly. But yeah, sorry, moving on. According to Al Jazeera, U.S. military officials are actually, as of the time we're recording this, are testifying on Afghanistan withdrawals. Pentagon chiefs acknowledged failures in U.S. withdrawal that led to fall of Kabul to the Taliban, end quote. Now, ironically enough, got a bit of an alert on my phone saying that General Milley said that maybe I think 10, 20 minutes ago, as of the time we're recording this, that Al-Qaeda could come back to take over all of Afghanistan within a year. Guys, it's a puppet show. I'm not saying Milley's behind it. I'm not saying Lloyd Austin is behind it. I'm just saying the ones that, we can even see Dr. Eric Davis with some of the deleted clips from the Mr. Greenstreet interview talking about, the Admiral Wilson documents, saying that, these rogue sort of alliances and brethren are made amongst these military industrial complex individuals, and in some cases intelligence individuals, because the intelligence community would need to be let in on things, but the loyalties to each other, it's not to the overall structure. And I bring this up because Lloyd Austin and Milley, I'm not saying they're innocent. I'm sure they got a lot of responsibility, but I think they're also partly taking the fall for the military industrial complex, guys. I could be wrong, but
no, I think they are. I think that's absolutely correct. We'll get into it at the end. I have a overall encompassing thing, but this Taliban to Al-Qaeda to, I mean, if we were worried about the Taliban taking over months ago, now we're almost placatingly friends with the Taliban, but we have to keep the fear alive. So now we're worried about Al-Qaeda taking over from.
Right. And the rebuttal to that in the mainstream media narrative would be, how dare you question? You're telling us that our great soldier, this and that. Yeah, I kind of am. That are great, the military industrial guys, not the soldiers on the ground.
Not soldiers at all. Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Everyone, speaking of, sick and tired of big tech and blatant American interference in Russian elections. This comes just with a bit of irony because that's all we hear about on our end from the opposite way. So it is not implausible to think that's all that they complain about over in Russia. It's a tit for tat kind of thing. Widespread blatant interference in recent Russian election, ranging from targeted recommendations to censorship by Silicon Valley. My only question is, did it limit who they want, like who establishment Russian politics wanted to win? Did it disrupt anything? They point to Trump shouldn't have won the 2016 election except for Russian interference. Is there someone that shouldn't have won besides US interference in Russia? That's the only thing that I haven't seen yet.
The irony behind this too, to add my 2 cents, is that you look at videos being surfaced recently of Hillary Clinton back in 2018 saying, I've met with people in Silicon Valley and they're concerned that the 2020 election will have more deeper implications because foreign adversaries and hackers could actually get into the machines, the Dominion voting system machines. Now, granted, I don't believe she said Dominion, but she said voting machines. So she says that 2.5 years ago, and then now it's all of a sudden we found no issues with the Dominion machines. Now, again, I'm not saying what is right and what is wrong. That I don't think that's for us to say. But the point is that which narrative is the media going with here? That
Exactly.
That's the thing.
But as to his own point, he says everyone's sick and tired of big tech, including the United States. They made up their own rules. That's how they decide things. They let some off the hook, give others the chop. They blocked the former U.S. president. Why? They don't like him. It is a separate entity from it makes its own regulatory bodies, it makes its own appeal commissions. It's an interesting like monster and beast that is big tech.
Absolutely. It's terrible. It's terrible. The next thing is that according to the Straits Times Asia, China shows off new drones and jets at the Zhuhai Air Show. China on Tuesday showed off its increasingly sophisticated air power, including surveillance drones, with an eye on disputed territories from Taiwan to the South China Sea and its rivalry with the United States. End quote. Now, there's a couple angles I view here personally.
Exactly,
one of them is that the military demonstrations of these powers, whether it's China, Russia, we see as of last night, we know that North Korea allegedly fired a ballistic missile into Japanese airspace and into Japanese waters. When we see things like this, I can't help but think that this is parallel, hand in hand, with the advancement of the space race. You have the military, you have the major world powers showing off their military capabilities, and then it's hypersonic this and this and that. And then you have all of a sudden the space race ramping up and Saudi Arabia investing in rovers for Mars. There's a parallel, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but Camden,
you're right. Absolutely. It's it's kind of transparent what the point is here. They've taken tech that is industry, cutting edge, and they've said, look, we have this. I watched the videos of the air show. It was a lot of more like Saturday morning local air show airport acrobatics and putting smoke out behind your jet and things. But these are impressive machines that can fly farther than anything else in airspace right now, distance wise. I mean, that is highly beneficial to a endeavor in the Pacific, right?
Right.
So you see what they're ramping up for, what they're trying to nudge, warn at kind of thing. We hear all the time about their interest in the South China Sea. Absolutely.
Well, again, the other angle too is Taiwan, right? I do believe that there is, even regardless if there's things we don't know. I mean, not the Chinese people, if the CCP takes Taiwan, we're gonna see chip shortages like we haven't seen them ever. So
and to make its own money off of these things, it's selling these to European countries, to Middle Eastern countries. It's taking over a weird military industrial market space that the U.S. has had a grapple on for a long time. I mean, point blank is
right. Exactly.
The energy crisis roiling in Europe and China and beyond. This is a lot of like, eye roll disastrous news, but we'll get to exactly what I mean by all this later. Natural gas prices skyrocketing, albeit later covered. Boris Johnson says this gas crisis is quieting down in specifically the UK, but energy, point blank energy is a problem. So this builds into, in my head, your take, Dave, kind of we need to find alternative methods of energy. Oh wait, we have this really cool thing called 0 point energy.
Right. And that's the other thing too, that I don't know if they'll jump to 0 point, but they'll make up some deflated version.
Yeah.
Or,
exactly.
I don't want to say make up, but they'll extract the deflated version.
They'll come out with a throttled, a 1 point energy.
Right.
1 point energy.
Exactly. Some 1 point, something like that.
Yeah.
They'll come out with something like that. And they justify this again with there's going to be for members, you'll see the early release later tonight, but in a day or two the public will see it as well, 2 or 3 days, about having to do with a document saying back in the 80s they had weapons that could, damage very precisely, make forest fires look very natural. Now, I'm not trying to imply a conspiratorial claim there. What I'm saying is that those type of weapons and apparatuses in correspondence with alleged quote unquote shortages is what creates the escalation for the space race, the militarization, renewable energy. And again, I could be wrong. I firmly believe at the very, very top level of things, if you want to even call it a level, it's not humans pulling the strings, but
right, absolutely.
I could be wrong. The next thing is that according to the BBC, speaking of which, the petrol supply crisis starting to ease. Boris Johnson says this was literally a handful of minutes ago. Now, it's interesting because Mr. Johnson said the situation on the forecourts was stabilizing and people should be confident to go about their business. The Petrol Retailers Association also said there were early signs the pressure was starting to ease after days of queues and pump closures. Now, the Labour Party said the government had let the country crash from crisis to crisis. Now, okay. Meanwhile, dozens of army tankers are on standby to help with high demand, end quote. Is this real? Is this not? Maybe certain elements of it. Is this curated? Was this done on purpose?
Right. We had comments even that, and I looked into it. They're absolutely right. The problem seems to not even actually be what's the problem now that's like persisting is truck drivers aren't able to transport the petrol or the oil or the gas needed. It's not even actually about supply. It's about the infrastructure of supply lines. Why are there not enough truckers suddenly? Does it have to do with some VAX cars? Does it have to do with just general unrest? That's where the question is. Yeah.
Exactly. Could this be something to cause a frenzy so that, again, on a more esoteric aspect, mass consciousness does not come together? Because as we've seen, there have been major congregations of people in the UK specifically. I mean, all over the world, don't get me wrong, but quite often in the UK, people protesting, doing mass meditations for the last 8 to 12 months. Could this be a way to, disorient the people?
Much easier to get people fighting at gas stations than gathering in public spaces.
I mean, before we go to the next story, there was an officer, from my understanding, a police officer who was butting lines in the UK because he was
an ambulance, things like that. It's so much easier to get people riled up than helpful.
Exactly.
The French government confirms cabinet ministers' phones bore traces of Pegasus spyware. We on this channel, we've talked about Pegasus lots. The phones by 5 French cabinet ministers bore traces of Pegasus spyware, according to analysis done by their country's security agencies. Why only these 5 phones? What did these 5 cabinet members have going on specifically that made them susceptible to Pegasus spyware? Did they go buy all one type of phone from one outlet of one? You know what I mean?
Do they have access to classified information that
absolutely.
other adversaries would want? That's another thing too. Again, we've spoken about many times of, Pegasus, basically this software being the new Promise, PROMIS, which, Epstein, Robert Maxwell, Ari Ben Menashe, those guys, that Iran Contra, the whole thing there, CIA, Mossad. Again, why those individuals, we could extrapolate for so many different reasons, but ultimately, I mean, if this Pegasus spyware is as powerful as they say, it only makes me think of what's being developed even more remotely.
Yeah, this is already to market. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
right,
exactly. The next thing is that, according to Axios, 2 top Fed officials retire amid criticism over investment activities. Now, if we scroll down, it says 2 top Federal Reserve officials are, facing backlash. Why it matters. Boston Fed President Eric Rosengreen and Dallas Fed President Robert Kaplan have been embroiled in controversy since it was disclosed that the 2 owned assets sensitive to the monetary policy they were helping to shape in 2020. Interestingly enough, both noted that their actions didn't. Bullshit. Anyways,
they note that, but the most interesting thing about it is them deciding to retire, deciding to step down right here, right now, together at the same time. The Boston Fed, the Dallas Fed, those are 2 of the biggest hubs in America for monetary policy. Yeah.
Was someone nudged in the IRS and, told, listen, if these guys step down within a relatively short period of time, don't look into so and so? And I mean,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not to be
Absolutely.
conspiratorial, but we know that's how they work, especially when it's the same people being circulated, Democrat or Republican, throughout many, many years of process of transitions in administrations, right?
Exactly. Now here from Disclosed TV, Greta Thunberg says blah 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 and the crowd cheers. I found this headline a little might misleading, because if we listen here, she's you can pull this up really easily. It's all over the news today, I think, because they're trying to make us mad about it. She says blah 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 a lot to the transcript. There's no planet B. There's no planet blah blah blah. There's the green economy, blah blah, CO2, blah blah. Near net zero by 2050. She's more taking a stance on what our politicians say. They paint their constituents with these really nice, pretty words, but their policy doesn't really follow suit. So I think she might have taken a horrible, like, I sound dumb because I'm not actually saying anything, way to say it, but I think I get what she's trying to make a point at here.
There's also an angle too that I would arguably propose, which is that she was told to say these things by, you could say, the elites, because it would make fun of the elites while still pushing the agenda. So people think, okay, she's relatable.
She can't relatable, right?
I respected her to be honest, the first 6 to 18 months of when she became big a handful of years ago, and then I started to realize she's getting involved in the grasps of the World Economic Forum and this and that. Then I'm like, okay, nothing against her individually, but her being a part of
faith when she tweeted, she accidentally copy and pasted whoever her handlers like email to her was, saying you should tweet this and then maybe this and then maybe this, and she just accidentally copy and pasted the entire like plan, and that's obvious that someone is giving her things to say. So that's just questionability, bare minimum.
Right, absolutely. And there's no shortage of money when you push the narrative for the establishment, right? Not saying that she is, but the signs lead there. The next thing is, according to RT.com, the student who egged French President Macron during the Lyon fair visit was sent to a psychiatric ward. Now, if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see here that the egging incident happened on Monday, but he was subjected to a psychological evaluation, which found, quote, an absence of discernment and need for hospitalization, end quote, and was then involuntarily admitted to the city's La Vinatière psychiatric hospital, the statement said. If he's deemed competent to be held responsible for his actions, he may face prosecution for an attack on a public servant, the crime for which he's being investigated, end quote. Now, like, here's the thing. From a realistic level, what did you think, Macron, when you have these generals writing to you? I'm not saying to cater to the conservative angle of things or the conservative ideology, but try and find a middle ground, or at least come out and say, listen, we're going to work to find a middle ground. None of that. He's just, he's going to, he reminds me of Trudeau. He's just going to his stops, and some are good. Some of them he's getting
taking crowd baths.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we're following up on articles here. The Chinese air show, this egg throwing thing. Yeah. We want to make sure y'all know that we stay on the news as we report it. And it's strange because this kid could have realized that he was going to face prison, and he decided to play mentally incompetent. You could literally just take it as they are trying to lock this man down and put him into a straitjacket solitary room where he's no longer a problem. I mean, there's different angles to why this would happen, but either way, okay, is it assault? Was that an assault measure? Like, legally speaking, throwing an egg at someone? Remember when Bush got the shoe thrown at him? Yeah, exactly. I mean, is that a full-blown court case that we need to prosecute, or is that like an double protest?
Yeah, I agree. The double standard shows there, right? So, I mean, it's hard to say, but it's just, again, like Hamden said, to follow up on the story to show that, he's being evaluated for these psychological.
It's a shame.
Yeah,
absolutely. According to Al Jazeera, Nigeria's mandatory youth course. So something interesting in Nigeria, you have to mandatorily go to these NYSC, that stands for the let me make sure I say it right. Yeah, the Nigeria's National Youth Service Corps. You can sometimes figure out how to get out of it, but you face prison time if you don't go to these youth training corps that who is set up other than regulatory agencies left over from Imperial Africa. And it's why is this a thing? Why, I mean, is the third world, I don't think they're really third world even, but is the infrastructure and learning ability there so poor that this needs to be forced? Or why can't you rely on people to, if they want to learn, go learn?
This is another thing too. I don't know the specific and intrinsic geopolitical
Yeah,
affairs of Nigeria, so I don't want to say specifically. With that being said, I mean, when you take a look at this, look, if it's, again, as I always say, it's not for me to say what's right or wrong. If this is what the people want, if this is what a legislative body formally agreed upon, or whatever they, whatever apparatus they have there to make the decisions, so be it. So be it. If not, I wonder, is there an intelligence angle here? Is there an
right. I mean,
influence?
they go
Yeah,
to this after they go to university. They then go to this tertiary school. This
right.
is like a further indoctrination. The question being, if you've gone to university,
Yeah.
why do you need to go into that, punishable by fines and jail time? That's derailing an entire chance at a productive life that you had immediately leaving university. It's a strange, not comparing it to, but a Hitler's Youth Boy Scouts kind of like indoctrination, teaching people on the side, make sure that they're model people for how you want them to be in your worldview. It's interesting.
Right. And it's especially nowadays, with all the knowledge being spread around, again, we could say some real, some fake, but it just goes to show the correlations that people are finding more and more having to do with relating things like what you said to the Hitler Youth. And I say that seriously because, 10, 20 years ago, I bet you this article wouldn't have even been allowed to be put out there. Right.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
So
Um,
yeah, it's really unfortunate. But the one final thing I wanted to say really quickly had to do with the WHO. So not necessarily relative to what this particular article of Nigeria, but the WHO allegedly is horrified over sexual exploitation by aid workers in the DR Congo. Um,
yeah.
I say BS. They knew it was.
I
I don't.
mean,
I don't
yeah,
want
they
to say
knew.
it.
They could
Yeah.
plausibly deny it until this point.
Right.
And this
Right.
builds into a greater, I guess we'll call it a theory that I had that we're working on, that we have. So things like this, this we know about La Palma, but this is an entirely other thing that, just so everyone's clear, like that is massively fake. That like that's, if you go look up Burko erupting, because that is a fake video, the only things that show up are this one clip that you just saw a bunch of times, zero news articles on it. It doesn't, we have, I mean, this on the Instagram post, this came from someone that is of UFO Twitter, UFO Instagram, whatever you want to call it. And so why are they sharing things that are so blatantly fake? Why are they trying to derail and create narrative? If you look at just Al Jazeera this morning, where I took this at 6 a.m, the headlines, unprecedented power cuts hit home in China, Malaysia in pandemic, North Korea fires missiles, Haiti elections postponed, American siblings blocked from returning to China, Hong Kong man on national security trial over protest chants. The
Yeah.
entire world is being purposefully very made to look in disarray, in unrest. We could flip the script here. This is not just to fearmonger and panic, but what if the intelligence communities of the world want us to get so mad, so angry, that we really do start social unrest, social revolution? I think the point would be that their hopes, they could then make us completely give up with their overwhelming might of the hypersonic missiles, of the
Yeah.
anti-grav, of the, they then quell an entire revolution and now justify massive totalitarian authoritarian measures.
While people are getting truthfully more and more depressed at an
Yeah,
individual level, which again suppresses the subconscious, suppresses the ability, so many different things, right? And
absolutely.
absolutely, yeah,
And
100%.
so like I'm for real change. Like don't get anyone twisted. I want down with these fuckers. But we have to like make sure that we talk about it, because if this is what they want, well, we can't fall into a trap, but we also have to know that we're all going to commit, really believe, really communicate, and know that they're underestimating us massively. That is, we have to do this the right way and the real way. We can't just millennial scroll on your phone for a minute. We can't be a pocket revolutionary, is what I'm really
Right.
getting
That
at.
exactly. With that being said, everybody, we would like to thank all of you so much for tuning in as per usual. We have a Let's Get Banned for the public coming out a little bit later this evening. We also have a early release episode and a members coming in the following hours on Patreon. With that being said, everybody, thank you so very much, and we'll catch all of you very soon. Cheers.